What's up, guys? What's up, Omar?
Hey, Micah.
What's up, man? How have you been?
Yo,
I'm doing great, bro. How you been?
I've been doing good. What about you, Esat?
yo, what's up?
What's up? So, Omar, tell me a little bit about yourself. I obviously know stuff about you because you're my boy, but the people who are watching this don't. So,
Yeah. So I'm a wrestler. I'm trying to be a wrestler. Let's see. I'm trying to go to MIT for chemical engineering. But we'll
well,
see
those
how
are
that
two
goes.
very
Polar
non-adjacent goals.
opposites.
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just living life, man.
that's a
Just
that's a
living life.
very interesting philosophy, which we will talk about. Esat, what about you?
Hey, happy to be here. Well, I'm trying to be a lawyer, so hopefully I'll do like a philosophy undergrad. Right now, philosophy is it's kind of like my passion, like a hobby almost. Well, I wouldn't say hobby because, it's very important in my life, but I'm hoping to become a lawyer in the future.
Why do you want to be a lawyer?
Well, of course, there's the financial part of it, but I like debating a lot. I feel like I have a strong sense of justice, so I like fighting for what I think is right.
Like, there's like a lot of paperwork. Like, I hate lawyers. I hope you reconsider.
There's a lot of paperwork, stuff like that. I like the ideology of, in America, like everyone has like the freedom to be represented, to fight for, have someone fight for them. So I come from a country where that's not really prominent. So when I came here, I kind of fell in love with the idea of everyone should have a right to defend themselves.
And so, where are you from, by the way?
Turkey.
Turkey. Okay. So when you talk about like people having the right to defend themselves, right? Do you mean in a legal context solely, or do you also believe in like Second Amendment? Like, what do you think about that? Out of curiosity.
I would say both, because obviously, you know, in America, like here, it's very like strict. Like people try not to like go against the Constitution. I think that's very good. I'm always like an advocator for having like a strong framework so that people can go off of. Also, I think it's important that people should share different perspectives and come together so that we could form a community with big diversity.
Omar, what about you? Do you think people should be able to have this like right to defend themselves with guns at least?
With guns. I mean, I feel like it's an innate right to be able to defend yourself, but there's obviously, I believe there should be some sort of limitations to it. But that's just me. Yeah,
Hmm.
no, I do think the Second Amendment is still needed, though. It's still
Okay.
necessary.
And I want to go back to something you just said about needing like a large variety of like positions and perspectives to be able to have a conversation, right? I'm curious, what do you guys think? Do you think the country is too polarized, and why do you think that might be?
Polarized isn't separated, like divided.
Yeah, like divided,
Yeah, I feel like the two
like
whole, the,
polar
I
like a
don't,
molecule.
yeah, yeah, I do not like the whole two-party system. I believe we should have multiple parties or one party that's advocating for different stuff. Because at the end of the day, it's not red versus blue. It's not Democrat versus Republican. We're all Americans, we're all might have different opinions, but still at the end of the day, at the core, we're still Americans. We shouldn't go kill each other for what we think or what we say, obviously. And I
But what
think
do you
the
think?
two
Do you think the causes of all this polarization? Asad, I'm also curious what you think. Why are we so polarized? Like, what caused this? How did we get here?
Well, first of all, like Omar said, I think that having just two parties is honestly not enough because there's so many diverse thoughts and we shouldn't just see things as black and white, red and blue. As to answer your question, I think the main source of violence and division in general is ignorance. And it's how people generally they're so quick to like hear something, even if it's just like one sentence or one phrase, and it triggers them and they completely like ignore everything you're saying. I think that overall knowledge, like reading books and educating yourself about other people, is basically the cure for all of this.
Do you think I mean, I guess most people in this country, from my understanding at least, have a very negative view of education in general. They're quite like aversive towards it. Why do you think that might be?
I think the biggest source of this kind of hatred for like opening up your boundaries, going outside of your comfort zone, is that like, it's just that people want to be comfortable, right? And the best way for a lot of these people to be comfortable is to live in ignorance and to say, hey, I have these beliefs. I'm just going to keep on believing them. I'm not going to listen to what other people say because it's the most convenient for me.
Do you think that there's something wrong with the current like system of education in the United States? Because my personal belief is that children have this natural like curiosity from, ages like maybe 8 to, since they're born to maybe by the time they're like 12 years old, like it's gone. It's mostly gone for a lot of them. And you wonder like what happened to it. And so a lot of people I think are quite they feel that there's something wrong with the system of education, but a lot of them aren't educated enough or really don't know what's what it is. And I'm curious, what do you guys think? If is there a problem with the way that we're educating kids, and if so, what is it?
I like the whole European way of looking at it, where it's not just like, you get educated in all these different topics for like 15 years or something, where like there's like vocational schools or there's different pathways you can go to other than just normal high school. And I don't know about you guys, but my district offers it, but it's not like as good as it is in Europe or in other country or in other continents. So I feel like we should be more like specific. Like, we should know what we wanna go into, and, like, instead of just, like, a general information, like, instead of being, like, Renaissance taught or, like, taught just in general about different subjects, I think we should be more specialized or focused in on 1 or 2 subjects that we really like. Like,
That-
yeah.
This is a fair point. I'm curious, do you think that, I guess allowing students to concentrate earlier on, for example, for me, right? I'm really into math. I wasn't into math until I was maybe in 8th grade. Maybe if I on one hand, if I wasn't exposed to it from outside of school, right, I probably wouldn't be as interested in it as I am now. And there are certain subjects I think that students are never exposed to in school, or they're never exposed to either outside or inside of school. Do you think up until a certain point we should require kids to I guess get that like that breadth of like having a lot of different topics, or do you think like no, maybe they'll learn it outside of school, they'll learn it on their own, and then school is more for every day. I hope that makes sense. I guess what I'm asking.
I mean, more of, like, the second choice, but, like, I don't know, I just see a lot of people that leave school and just they don't know what to do with their lives. Like, I mean, they've been taught math, science, this and that, but they just don't know what to do. What do I do with all this information? How do I use it? How do I apply it to my everyday life? So I think that should be more incorporated in school.
Yeah, and Esat, I'm curious what you think as well. Do you think we need to focus more on breadth or depth or choice or what?
I think that a lot of the times like people kind of see school as just I go there, I learn, math, science, history, stuff like that. The core, the basic things they teach in school. But honestly, I think there's a lot more that needs to be taught, that needs to be actually encouraged. Because, I always praise, um, as an American, I always praise this country for things like the First Amendment rights, because it's very open. It says you could believe what you want. But also, in school, I feel like there's not enough kind of education on these things. As in, there's a lot of censorship where people try to justify saying, don't speak about what you believe because some other people might not agree. They kind of have this idea that everyone should keep things to themselves because they could believe whatever they want, right? And I don't think that's right. I think there should be dialogue about social problems, spiritual problems, moral problems, and school kind of negates that, and it kind of a lot of the time it kills people's drive to think about these kind of stuff when really they're just as important as math, science, social studies.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend the other day, and for our literature class, we had to choose a book to analyze, right? And she said, she really likes, I don't know if you know The Stranger by Albert Camus. It's this very like it's a short like novella. It's very like it's much about absurdism. It's by Albert Camus, and it's very like philosophical book, right? And she said like, don't I don't want to pick it for my novel I don't want to pick it. It was like an option for a novel that she could have read for this like project, right? And she said I don't want to pick it because I don't want to associate this book with school. I don't want it to be associated with school. And to me, that's sad. That shows a fundamental failure in our education system. That this is something that is like academic in some sense. She doesn't want to associate with school. It's like, Mark Twain said, I never let school get in the way of my education. Do you think that there's something we could like? What could we change about the way that we're teaching? Is it just a matter of more breadth, or like the actual content, or is it there like a fundamental issue with the manner in which the information that we're showing is presented?
I think surely I think there's a better way. There has to be to kind of hear other perspectives on things where a lot of the times, especially in classes like history, they try to show it as, black and white. They basically say this is what happened, and this is the perspective that we're gonna teach you on. And if you try saying something else, we're just gonna
Hmm.
say it's incorrect or we're gonna try to silence it. And this is honestly the problem that we faced, that all humans have faced for hundreds of years, because a lot of the time people criticize what the schools thought about, like, for example, Christopher Columbus, and how they portrayed him as like this amazing hero, right? And now we don't believe that anymore. But the truth is, things are being taught so black and white now that maybe in 50 or 100 years later they might look back and they might think, oh, look how bigoted these guys are, like they're portraying this one perspective in school, and no one can go against it.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, the world is not black and white. And like you said, like, democracy thrives on an informed citizenry that is truly, like, knows about other perspectives. Do you think there's a point where we should, like, draw a line and say, okay, thanks, Omar. For example, I feel bad Omar left. Okay. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. For example, like, should, like, maybe if someone believes that we should, like, like they're like a neo-Nazi, like literally. Do you think that that should still be like part of the curriculum, or like to what extent, I guess, are you for freedom of ideas? Is it just everything, or?
Well, I think that, of course, there is a line that we have to draw between freedom of speech and freedom of harassment, basically, or
Hmm.
hate. Now, I'm not saying that, obviously, if someone is a neo-Nazi, they can't just be like harassing people about it or like saying stuff like that in school. I don't think it should be encouraged in school, of course, or in public settings. I do believe that anyone should be able to believe whatever they want, but I don't think that's an excuse to harass people or to spread hate.
Do you think though that, like, why don't you think that, I guess, if someone's spreading hate, but that's their belief, right? Like, how, I guess, how do we determine what counts as hate? Because a lot of times, like, for example, like some certain Christians believe that, gay people should marry. And to me, I would say that that's like hate. But I also understand that that for some people isn't. And so where do we, I guess, draw the line between hate speech and, whatever?
Right. So this is honestly a very big issue. And to be honest, for my knowledge, there is no like clear line that we can draw this. I think we just have to go based off the idea that in a place like school, where there are children, and the main topic, like the main incentive is to learn and educate others. I think people should be allowed to say, we don't want same sex marriage or something like that. They should be allowed to say, I believe this, but they should also respect what other people believe. So I think just going to school and just preaching about those types of things and just like openly discriminating against other people, not respecting their beliefs is, I don't think that should be allowed. But I don't think anyone should be necessarily silenced for having those beliefs, but they just shouldn't push it on to other people.
Hmm. But then what if somebody says, like, in terms of like what you're saying before, right? That other people may not want to have certain conversations about certain political things, right? Like they might not want to hear like the other side, like red and blue, right? Why doesn't why doesn't the same logic apply to that? Or does the same logic apply to that, that like you shouldn't be able to force your beliefs on other people? Is having a conversation, could that with some like well, what do you think the difference is, I guess?
So I think, wow, I mean, these are really like deep questions, and there's a lot of like, how to say, a lot of like issues that comes with this. It might anger a lot of people or it might upset them. But I think that overall, we must share experiences, right? So no one is perfect. No one has seen it all or experienced it all. So there could be someone who is like a great scholar who's spent like all of their days like studying, and there might be something useful that he could learn from even like maybe like a 6, 7 year old. And
Six,
it's just,
seven. Sorry.
yeah, no, it's just right. But honestly, it's just there's a lot of issues with this. I think the main message is that you should listen to other people and hear their perspective, because no one is perfect. And, it's kind of very like egotistical, like narcissistic to claim that you know everything. You don't want to hear what someone else is saying.
So then do you think in that case that there be a line drawn at all for hate speech and free speech? Because if there is a line, then, who decides where that line is? Because I could just say, whatever conservatives say is hate speech. Because I'm a pretty progressive guy myself. I would say I'm pretty far left, but, you know, like who gets to decide where that line is, if there is a line, and, should there be a line at all, I guess.
To be honest, Uh, especially, okay, so in a country like America where there are so many different people and so many different beliefs, creating a line based on specific values, I don't think is possible. But I think, for example, intention is very important, right? If
Yeah.
someone is coming to school and saying, I don't support like these groups of people or these types of people, they should be entitled to those beliefs, but they can't come into school saying like, I hate you.
Yeah, there needs to be a sense of like civility in these
Yeah, exactly.
conversations for sure. Yeah. And also, a lot of people I think aren't trained or don't know how to have civil conversations because those differing beliefs, when you go into a debate, right? You're going in it to it with the sense that like, oh, my mind may be changed. At least in
Yeah.
or a conversation.
Absolutely.
But I think a lot of people go into it with the intention to win, and I just don't think that that's a I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think if you go into a debate or conversation and you already believe, oh, my values, what I think is 100% right, this is just causing further chaos, it's causing further separation. And this is basically the main problem with having, just Republicans, Democrats, like left, right. Oh, I follow this belief. I'm not going to listen to what they say. It's very hypocritical and problematic because, to be honest, you have to acknowledge that, like I said before, you don't know everything. So when you go into a debate, you should try to find either a middle ground or you should just try to learn something from the other person's experiences. When you're having an argument, debate, conversation about anything, you should go into it expecting to be either changed or to find some type of middle ground, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all people. No one is perfect, and there's lots to learn from everyone else. So we should go into things with an open mind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, do you think that like at least a lot of people, they aren't very educated on politics. And I mean, they don't have a lot of time to learn about politics. Do you think in this sense that like being educated is sort of like a luxury, not just in like a formal education, but being able to research like what candidate I'm going to vote for, being trained to do that in the first place, or, having time to do that because you're having free time, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think beyond money and materialistic things, I think education, knowledge is one of the greatest gifts that we have, especially here in the West, because we have, ability to, first of all, we have the internet. We could go in, we could see all these types of perspectives. And, it's such a luxury to have these types of things because we could learn so much about not just our group, like what you believe, people like you might believe, but also the differing views. And this is also why I'm really against the censorship of things like social media, because I think everyone should have a voice and you should have the ability to hear that what they're thinking.
Do you believe in the free market? Like, do you think that we shouldn't have a lot of regulations for businesses?
I think absolutely we cannot go extremely like either side. We can't have a communist, like socialist market, but also we can't just have it be laissez-faire, right? So like we can't have a completely capitalist market because that causes lots of problems. We've seen a lot of the times in history, like monopolies being built, people abusing their power, taking advantage of others. I do believe to a certain extent that there should be a free market because, I think, well, obviously there needs to be competition. And this is like going into like economics a little bit, but there's lots of competition that needs to be needed to have a stable progress. But I think the government does need regulations, right? To ensure things like civic rights, like health, like freedom of speech, freedom of press. So those types of things I think is very important.
So you're a pretty like moderate guy from what you're telling me. Like you don't think we should swing too far either way. I mean, I guess specifically because we were talking about free speech, do you think that social media companies should be regulated by the government to make sure they're not censoring certain beliefs, or should the government not really interfere with that?
I think I'm absolutely against regulations. By regulation, I mean censorship, sorry, in social media. And someone has to, make sure that there is freedom of speech in social media. And that entity could potentially be the government or a sect of it. Of course, we don't want the government to have too much power to the point where it might be like a dictatorship or a problem like that. I just think that in social media, people should be able to say like what they want. And if we need the government to be like able to sustain that, then yeah, I think absolutely they should have the power to.
Do you think that in some ways the free market may stomp progress? For example, in the medical field, right? We put a lot of money into like antidepressants and stuff that people have to take for a prolonged period of time rather than like one-time cures because those don't make a lot of money. Those aren't particularly profitable, even though that would help people, right? What do you think? Do you think we should have free healthcare? Do you think that, what do you think about that?
Well, to be honest, and like I will say this for any topic, but I'm not the most educated person, of course. I don't claim to be an expert, especially in these types like of topics. I'm not um so I might not entirely know what I'm talking about, but from my knowledge, I think there are definitely negatives and positives to having a free market. And I think a lot of the time, these companies do try to take advantage of people, of customers, the general public, to increase their wealth. And that is a problem that we see recurring through history because when people or government or companies they prioritize profit over the public's actual needs, we see there's lots of problems that arise. But at the same time, it might just be inevitable. I mean, there's always a different, there's always going to be people in the world who try to take advantage of their power. And I think trying to kill this free market, the freedom of enterprise, trying to kill this entirely is going to cause like, 1,000 more problems.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But also, and what is the role of a company if not to make profit? I mean, that's basically the definition of capitalism, a system where the means of production are owned by private entities whose goal is to maximize profit. Unless somehow the incentivizing public needs results in more profit, they have no incentive to, you know, prioritize public needs without governments stepping in. I'm curious what you think specifically, like, to what extent in general does the government have, like, what right do they have to step in to the doings of businesses? Where do you draw the line?
I think John Locke also like speaks about this a lot, the role of the government basically. And it's to protect the rights of the people, provide health and provide people's rights to chase liberty, right? I might be missing a few, but in general, if government's prioritizing profit goes against any of these criteria like health, rights or right to pursue liberty, then I think yeah the government should step in. There should be specific regulations, right? That's why I don't advocate for a laissez-faire system or a system where the government doesn't step in at all. I think the government does have to step in sometimes to prioritize the public.
Do you have any particular political belief?
Well, I will start off. I'll say this: I am Muslim, so many of my values derive from it. Right, I'm not a scholar by any means. I consider myself like a student of knowledge. Basically, I'm just I'm trying to learn new things. There are many beliefs that I hold strongly. One of my strongest beliefs, wow, I would say I think freedom of speech is honestly one of the greatest like blessings we have. I've seen and I have so many family members who fall victim to the lack to censorship, right? And I think that's something that I would fight for, right? I would, basically like sacrifice my whole like my life just defending this because I think it's so important for humanity to come together to have a proper civilization.
Yeah, I mean, we can't get anything done. We can't fix any of our other problems if there's no freedom of speech. So you make a fair point. Why? I mean, you said you have some family members. If you don't mind, if you're willing to share, what is that like? I mean, what is it like living? I have no experience with that. What is it like living in those places without freedom of speech?
Well, to put it simply, it's depressing. It's horrible. You're always scared. Like in Turkey, like, for example, in my case, there is essentially a dictatorship. The presidents, people in power, they control the media, they control like the journalists, the press, they control basically everything that is being fed to you. And people can't really speak up about it because if they do, like in just a few days, like knock knock, they're at the door and straight to jail. And I think there's a statistic I read a couple years ago. I'm not sure if it's still true now, but Turkey had more journalists in jail, just regular journalists who've been like serving for years in jail than China. So this is not like a ratio, but they straight up have more journalists. And the reason of this is because they're being silenced. And to live in these types of countries or environments, it's depressing. You can't really say what you're feeling. You can't like I have family members who are or like people I know, family friends who have been sent to jail and they can't do anything about it. And their family they can't say anything about it because if they do, and they're going to be in jail as well. So it's really horrible. And I think, honestly, I think other countries like America should step in and help them. It's their duty.
And some people might watching this might be like, okay, so like, what's the big deal? Like, why not just like not say anything? It's none of your business. Like, or maybe they'll just be like, why do you care? What do you have to say to those people?
I think we have the privilege of advocating for the weak, right? And this is a privilege of almost all Americans. And this is a privilege that the American government has. And honestly, it's not just a privilege, it's a must. Like we have to do this. It's an obligation for us to protect the weak, people who cannot stand up for themselves because they're being oppressed. And you might think a lot of the time is people are comfortable, like how I said at the beginning of the video. People are comfortable and they want to be comfortable. They like being comfortable and they don't want to step out of their comfort zone. They see people suffering in so many places, right? And they see this and they just say, "Oh well, like it's just another video. I'll just scroll through it."
Yeah.
I see a video of people see videos of kids starving. And I've been victim of this too. Like I've seen this stuff and yeah, sometimes I've put it aside. I've done other things and I've tried to ignore it. Why? Because, it's depressing for us. But I think it's necessary. You can't just
Yeah.
live in like a fantasy land. You have to acknowledge that there's kids suffering in the world and it's our duty to help them.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, for those people, they can't just like scroll out of their circumstances. Like they're in them. That's their life. It's extra depressing for them. But I mean, at the same time, there are so many problems with our world that how can you spend the emotional energy on every single problem there is? What do you what is someone to do when confronted with everything that's wrong with the world?
Right, right. And that's a very good question that you've placed because it actually arises a lot in things like utilitarianism, where like people are trying to prioritize the pleasure, the enjoyment of the world. And I always say this, to an extent, you should always prioritize yourself, right? And that doesn't mean like, oh, instead of donating to the poor, I'm gonna go play bowling with my friends and I'm not going to donate at all because I want to help myself. That's not what that means. That means you have to help other people to the extent where you are still enjoying yourself. You're still having fun, right?
So do you think like billionaires have a right to exist? Because they probably still have fun without like $1 billion.
I think that billionaires, well, everyone has a right to exist, but
Sorry, I mean
did you
to
mean
be
like the
billionaires.
concept of it,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think the concept of being a billionaire I've never liked that idea, and I always thought that being a billionaire is so harsh, it's so selfish, because you're having all this money to yourself that if you wanted, you could use it as toilet paper, honestly. And there's so many better uses. I don't know how people can like look at people suffering and then just buy a new car which they'll never use again. And for me, like for my values, I think that this is a horrible thing because there's people who could use the money. The money is a lot more valuable to them.
What about people who say, some people in response will say, like, oh, if you tax the billionaires, then nobody will want to make like more money, though no one will want to start a business because they'll just be taxed harshly. What do you have to say to those people?
Well, I'm not sure if most people who are who are trying to be billionaires, like who are like starting off with like I don't know, not that much, who are starting business, who aim to be billionaires. I don't think they would stop this business just to be like I guess millionaires.